Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Jessica Gem here with a new video for you. Welcome to part number 2 of What If Deku Never Returned to UA? I just wanted to greet you guys by saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. And so, we begin. The dimming light of the day poked through the leaves above him. His eyes had grown tired, but they focused nonetheless on the path ahead. He could feel All for One grow closer. Just beyond these woods, they were waiting. One for All's purpose, his purpose, it was all coming to fruition right in front of him. Izuku. The voice of Yuichi Shigaraki echoed in his head. The fight ahead will not be easy. We will help you as much as we can, but you understand the risk that comes with doing this by yourself, right? For a moment, he stopped and directed his gaze down to the twigs and leaves that riddle the forest floor. His teeth played with his bottom lip before speaking in a low whisper. No one else can do this. It's my responsibility. I was entrusted with this power for a reason. I have to face them alone. I have to end this cycle. This is it. The vestiges went quiet, but he could feel their apprehension at his words. It didn't matter. The sooner he finished this, the sooner he could get back to UA and his friends. The sooner he could ensure everyone could smile again. They've lost too much already. He stopped, dead in his tracks, as he heard a rustle of leaves behind him. Within seconds, he was getting grappled by lines of rope. They entangled him and brought him down to his knees. The stained ears of his mask fell down in front of his eyes. He shook them out of the way, and in front of him, he found Shoto and Katsuki. Izuku sighed deeply. So that's why Danger Sense never alerted me. My quirk only alerts one to danger. Shinomori's voice appeared in his mind. Your friends, they had no ill intent. They pose you no danger. Izuku remained quiet. He'd realized that the first few times they tried bringing him back. It's Katsuki who spoke first. If you weren't so damn exhausted, you wouldn't even need to rely on that quirk. He walked forward and crouched down. Their eyes met, and just for a moment, Izuku felt like he was back in middle school. Those red eyes that once stared deep into his soul, judging and ridiculing him for something he couldn't control. Not this time, though. They still judge him, but now it's out of concern and worry. And he shivered as he saw Katsuki reach a hand out slowly to him. Can you even see yourself? Please. When's the last time you went to get checked on by the pro heroes? Shoto chimed in, seemingly taking note of his bandaged arm. That looks fresh. Don't tell me you were expecting to fight them in this condition. Izuku stayed silent, contemplating what to say. He felt like he'd had this conversation a dozen times with them by now, and from what he could tell, they still weren't getting the big picture. He deflected. How is Ida doing? Has he made any progress on walking? Kaminari and Jiro, they got hurt the last time. Are they okay? What about Tsuyu? Have her parents decided on letting her stay yet? His questions were met with silence. That is, until he heard footsteps behind him, and the ropes tangling his torso and arms tightened slightly. Why don't you come home and see for yourself? He paled at the familiar voice. It was breathy and shaky, but just as strong as ever. The footsteps approached closer, and he felt her standing right behind him. He shut his eyes, still invisible behind the shadow of his mask, and he clenched his arms tighter against his body. He recognized that presence anywhere. Ochako. It's quiet again, but he refused to let those words be the last thing said before he got away. Uraraka, you know I can't do that. I'm tired of hearing the same speech about you being a martyr. Her voice ripped past his and he shrunk further. and I'm tired of explaining to you how stupid you're being." His voice wavered as he started again. I'm sorry." There's a pause, and quickly she whispered back to him, "I'm sorry too." Black Whip darted out on instinct, quickly untangling himself from Ochako's support rope, but not quick enough to avoid her quirk. He felt the weight of gravity lift off him, and in no time he was being thrown in the direction of Shoto. "Todoroki, now!" she screamed from behind him, and he spotted a towering wall of ice headed straight for him. His senses kicked back in, and he instinctually activated One for All. He wrapped himself in 30% of full cowling and let Black Whip retreat back into his body. Contorting his form, he used his momentum to spin in the air. Within seconds, his arms were whipping towards the ground, creating a blast of wind so strong it knocked back Todoroki's ice and propelled his weightless body high into the sky. Float kicked in, and he immediately reoriented himself. Ochako's quirk made things tricky, but as long as it was active, his speed was more or less infinite. For a second, he contemplated flying off and losing them, but he recalled the feeling he got earlier. All for One and Shigaraki were nearby, which meant he couldn't leave them in this area. He couldn't risk his friends facing them. They wouldn't survive. Below him, he felt the air shift as a booming explosion launched two figures up into the sky. To his right, a third just out from the ground riding a pillar of ice. They were persistent, which is a good thing in this case. He'll have to lure them away. Once he's far enough, he'll lose them and circle back for All for One. They were faster than he anticipated. Katsuki and Ochako reached his height within a few seconds, and he was forced to dodge their planned assault. He watched as his brown-haired friend bounced up from Katsuki's well-timed explosion. Her weightless body launched directly towards him. Narrowing his eyes, he focused his attention on her hands. He couldn't let her touch him, not just because of her quirk's effects making him easy to attack, but because of her skills in hand-to-hand combat. He knew Ochako. He knew her well. And if he let her get a hold of him, he'd be grappled to the ground faster than he could react. Float snapped him to the left just as her speeding body reached him. In what seemed like milliseconds, she passed by him and threw her hands out to grab his arm. He was fast, but his movements were harder to control under her quirk's influence, and he must have overcompensated with Float because she was able to grab him and twist her body behind him. "Your mother is worried sick about you, Izuku." He snapped his eyes shut as he heard her address him by his first name. "This isn't the way to do this! Come back home! Let us help you!" This time, he could feel it as they approached him. Ice was coming to his left, the chill in the air was prominent and hard to ignore. Katsuki must have been directly behind him, because he could practically feel the vibrations from his focused explosions. They were close, but Ochako was closer, and worst of all, he could hear her breathing and begging him to come back with every breath. The words she uttered shook him to his core. His mother, his family, and his friends. None of them wanted him out here. None of them wanted him to do this, but he needed to. If he went back, they'd all become targets. If he let them help, they could all die. How could they push for that horrible outcome so much? How did they not understand? He needed to leave. Honey is a free browser add-on available on Google, Opera, Firefox, Safari. If it's a browser, it has Honey. Honey automatically saves you money when you check out on sites like Amazon, Papa John's, and Kohl's. Wherever you shop, it's a good chance that Honey can save you money. All you have to do when you're checking out at these stores is to click that little orange button, and it'll scan the entire internet and find discount codes for you. If there's a coupon code, they will find it. And if there's not one, you can rest assured that you're getting the best price possible. If you install Honey right now, you can save like $50 to $100 on your shopping, doing nothing. There's literally no reason not to install Honey. It takes 2 clicks, over 10 million people use it, 100,000 5-star reviews. Unless you hate money, you should install Honey. They needed to leave. Yoichi's voice snapped him out of it. Lead them away, Nine. He needs to lead them away. Ochako was on his back, which made things easier. The others would follow him faster that way. One for All coursed through him, and he could feel her presence underneath the green sparks of energy. He was weightless, which meant he could move quicker. But it also meant he was more easily influenced by outside forces. His friend could send him to the ground if he wasn't careful, so he would have to make sure he was controlling his power perfectly. His eyes settled, and he picked a direction directly opposite Shigaraki and All for One. His voice came out low, but clear. Hang on, Uraraka. Just as Shoto's ice and Katsuki's explosions reached him, he vanished. Green lightning was the only thing alerting them to his direction, as he and Ochako were kilometers away already by the time they realized he's gone. He didn't risk looking behind him, for he was afraid he would lose control of float, and the non-weightless body he was carrying would throw him to the ground. Even so, he was fairly certain they were following him. It would take a few minutes for them to catch up, but not nearly as much as he'd like. As soon as he had gotten far enough away, and he was certain they had followed him, he would lose them and circle all the way back around to Shigaraki. Of course, that was easier said than done. His eyes darted around, looking for a good place to land, but just as he slowed down, he could feel Ochako's legs wrap around him tighter than before. And quickly, she breathed out a shocking word. Release! Before he could even react, his weight returned to him, and the control he needed to adjust his output took too long. His stomach dropped, as almost immediately their trajectory turned straight down. One for All fired within him, and he pulled up as much as he could. As fast as he could, he started slowing their descent, but suddenly, he felt a tap on his shoulder once again. What had been just enough power to hold himself in the air suddenly turned into a gross overcompensation as his gravity floated away. Ochako must have used her quirk on herself as well, because his efforts flung them into the sky with rapid speed. He grit his teeth, but before he could think of readjusting his output, Ochako flew off him, and he felt his arms and legs once again entangled with her support ropes. Her quirk worked in her favor once again, as he found himself spinning uncontrollably in the air, with no real mobility of his arms or legs. He strained his neck and caught a glimpse of his friend, who in one large swing had taken him and thrown him towards the ground beneath them. Even worse, he could hear her release the quirk once again. If he wasn't plummeting to the ground, he'd likely have been proud of her quirk application. She was able to apply her quirk in the situation in such a creative yet adaptable method, and she overpowered him, which is no small feat considering One for All is a ridiculously strong quirk. In fact, she had used that strength against him. Unfortunately, he didn't have any time to discuss it with her, because his current objective meant getting far away from her and protecting them all. Using a combination of Black Whip and float, he was able to stop himself and lower his immobile body down into a clearing of grass in between the woods and the outskirts of a city. Above him, he could see Ochako float down in his direction. Shoto and Katsuki were still specks in the distance, but they were on their way. For a moment, he breathed easily. They were all away from All for One. They were away from Shigaraki. He didn't need to worry about them getting killed anymore. At least for now. They would be safe. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in the content thus far. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our patrons. BD Flames, Ethan Davis, Terry Chills, Shifter Melees, Adam Zadjul, Xavbeat03, Zill, and Joshua Phelps. Secondly, I'd also like to thank all of our YouTube members. Toy Acosta, Rob the King, Sithlord906, CF2364, and Knuckles, Rimueo Tempest, Angel Juarez, Donald C. Stewart, Bryant Greer, and Refik135. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake animes with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content production. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members from 16 years old and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for new members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching. Farewell and have a divine day.